Hey everyone, this is Guy Gaming here today, back with another Roblox scripting tutorial. Today we will be doing one that has been pretty frequently requested, but I'm just barely now getting around to. Now for this script, I actually won't be able to demonstrate it to you until at the end of the video, but basically today we are going to be working on a mouse over to show group information script. I know a lot of the war groups really like stuff like this, so I figured we can go ahead and show how to make one so that they can put one in their place. And basically today, here, let me make mine visible. We're going to be making one that shows the group emblem, the player's name, the group's name, and the ID. Or sorry, their rank. The group name, the player's name, and the player's rank. Yeah. So as you can see here we have room for our 3 labels and the picture. You can set yours up however you want, of course, but if you set yours up differently than mine, you might have to mess around with the script a little bit so that everything is referenced correctly. But as you can see, this is how I have mine set up. So I have a big frame that holds the image label, and inside my big frame, I have another frame that's also in the same level as the image label. And then inside that is where I have the labels. And the reason I did this is so that I can have, I can have a big frame that holds everything, so I only have to change the visible property to one thing, like that. And it's easier to position if it's all in one frame. And then this little frame is just here to hold all the text, and then this is just here to hold the picture. So one thing with this though is if you're going to end up making your own GUI for this, make sure for this one especially that you're using the scale aspect of the position and size. You are not going to want to use offset on this, because if you do, it's going to look absolutely ugly on different size monitors. So like my monitor is 1440p, and like even in studio I have it really small. So like, the more I mess around with the screen size, you see my stuff resizes properly. But if you don't use scale and you use offset instead, you're gonna get some really weird stuff and it will just look really bad. So make sure you use the scale. But let's go ahead now and jump into the script. As you can see here, I have the script set right inside the screen GUI. This is just so that I have easy access to everything inside the GUI. And this is actually a pretty beefy script. So we're going to take it in chunks. So to start off, you can see that basically we just start with some variables like usual. First we get our group service, and this is what's going to give us the group information. You can do this all from the client, so you can see I'm doing everything from just a single local script here. This will put more processing and network usage on the client, which means on the player's computer instead of on Roblox's servers. I'm iffy on which one would be better performance-wise. I honestly don't think it matters, but it's kind of up to you. You can run the get groups async method from the server and then send the data back if you want. But I'm just going to be keeping this tutorial simple since the script is already pretty beefy as it is. Next, I just go ahead and get the parent frame. I'm just calling mine frame. Again, if you do choose to set up your GUI differently, you'll have to change some of these references around. But basically, if you follow my mouse, mine is referring to this frame right here. This is what I'm going to be calling my parent frame. Basically, this is just the one that moves around with my mouse and the one that I make visible and not visible. Next, I get the local player. This is so that we can get their mouse. And then this is where we get their mouse. And then next we create an empty table called group cache. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to get the player's group data every single time I move my mouse over them. That would be kind of crazy. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the player's data into the group cache. So that way all we have to do is access a table instead of having to go out and grab the data from Roblox every time. So when a player joins the game or when you mouse over them for the first time, it will add their group info into this table. And then when they leave the game, it will remove their data from this table. And then lastly, this is the one you'll need to change most importantly. This is your group ID. So I'm using the Roblox group, this one right here. And you can see up here in the URL that the group ID is 7. And so that's why the group ID I have in here is 7. But you're going to want to change that to whatever group you want. You can see in here, if I go to the roles, there are 3 different roles. Obviously, the only one I was able to use for this video was member because I'm not an admin or an owner of this group. So the first actual meaty chunk we're going to look at is this get group info function. And this is a function that I defined. This isn't part of Roblox. This is one that I wrote just so that I didn't have to copy and paste this code everywhere. So basically what it does is it just gets the player's group info. So here is the function that we will actually be using to get the group info. It's called getGroupsAsync, and basically what this does is it takes a user ID parameter, which is just a number, and it returns all the groups that they're in and includes this info for each group. So it includes the name of the group, the ID, the emblem URL, emblem ID, rank, role, if it's their primary group, or if it's in the clan, if the player's in their clan. So basically, since it returns an array of all the groups that the player's in, we have to loop through each of the players' groups until we find the one that we're looking for. So as you can see here, that is what we are doing. So first we get their groups by passing in their user ID, and then for each of the groups we get the group info. And then we're just checking the ID to make sure it matches the one that we provided. In this case, this is for the Roblox official fan group or whatever that they made. Then that's the set of group info that we return. As soon as we return, we break out of this for loop, so it'll just stop searching through their groups. And that's how we get that. These next 2 bits actually use this function that we just defined. Well, this one does. Uses this function we defined to add the player's group info to the cache. So what it does is every time a player is added, it goes ahead and puts in the group cache under the player's name their group info. So whatever's returned from this function gets set into the array that we have called group cache under the index of the player's name, because arrays in Lua they're called tables. Tables in Lua can have strings for indexes, so we'll be using the player's name. That gets stored away so that we don't have to call out to Roblox every time to get their group info. We can just keep it stored on the player's computer instead of having to use the internet all the time, which should reduce lag, minimally, but it should. Then next, when the player leaves the game, we just remove their info from our group cache, so that way it's just not sitting in a table. This isn't really necessary. It's just kind of nice to always have like a constructor and a destructor whenever you're doing stuff like this. I'm not even 100% sure if this actually completely destroys the reference, but it's good enough, so whatever. So now we're actually going to get into the meat of our script. So this is the move event handler. So if you remember up here, we got the player's mouse with get mouse. And so basically what this does is it just fires every time the player moves their mouse. It sounds more expensive than it is, at least than I hope it is. But as you can see here, so when the player moves their mouse, this function will get called, and basically we get the target or what the mouse is pointing at. And then we set the frame visible to false. This is just so that if we move the mouse off of the player, that it doesn't show up anymore. But If it is on a player, then it will get set back to true like immediately, so it doesn't really matter. So this if statement is basically checking that if there's a target and that the target has a parent, so that way we can't like just point off into the sky and have our script break, because that is something that can happen if you don't have a check like this. Then next we want to make sure that the player is actually a player. So first we check that they have a humanoid root part, and then we check if we can find them in the players list. And then once we do, we'll go ahead and get their character, because we know that since they're a player, their character will be the parent of whatever our mouse is pointing at. So like if our mouse is pointing at their right leg, their character will be the parent of their right leg, which is true. Then we set the frame's position relative to the mouse. So we're going to be using the offset here this time instead of the scale, because it just makes more sense here. So we use the mouse X and we'll get plus 10, which moves it 10 to the right of wherever the mouse is. And then mouse Y plus 5, which moves it 5 down from wherever the mouse is. And you'll see that when I show you the demonstration at the end. Then we set the frame to visible. And like I said, this counteracts this false up here and makes it look like it's always visible if your mouse stays on a player. You'll be able to see that in the demonstration at the end also. Now we just declare a variable called group info, and we'll assign it nothing right now. And then we're going to look in the group cache for the character's data. If we can't find it, so this if not will come in here if we can't find their group info. Basically, we're just going to do what we did when we added the player and just add their info to the group cache. So if we don't have it, we're just adding it. So the index is the character's name, and then we use get group info, which is that function we defined up here. And we're using the game.players get player from character and then passing in the character. So now we're just setting this group info that we got up here equal to the group cache of the character name, which was either set when they were added or it was set right here in case for some reason it didn't get added when they joined the game. That can happen if like you join the game after another player, so they wouldn't have joined the game while you were in the game, so you would have to add their group info to your cache when you point your mouse at them. And then once we get their group info, then we can actually start setting up our GUI. So I have you can see over here I have my frame, which is this frame. So lowercase frame references this frame. And I have frame.image label, and then I get the group info.emblem URL and set that to the image label's image property. And then I have frame.frame, and then I set the name, which is just the group info.name, because that's the group's name. If you remember back over from when we were looking at the Roblox Developer Hub, we have the name of the group, the emblem URL, and we are also going to be using the role here. So yeah, here we use the name, then we just put the player's name, and then we put their role name. So that's pretty much it. So once we have assigned those, our label will appear, or our frame here will appear with all the correct information. And I'm going to go ahead and jump to a demonstration where I had someone help me demonstrate this working to you. Alright guys, so here we are in a live game. I just wanted to apologize for the audio levels on the last clip. For some reason it was really quiet. But here you are. As you can see when I mouse over this character here, it does take a second to load the image, but once it does, it's like, you know, cached on the client. But as you can see when I mouse over this other player, I can see the group name, the player's name, and his role, as well as the image. It follows my mouse, and when I mouse off of him, it disappears. When he mouses over me, since I'm in the same group, he is also able to see the same things about me. Anyways guys, thanks for watching. I hope you found this helpful. I have been getting asked about this for a long time, so I decided to finally go ahead and make a tutorial for it. I promised my Discord that this would be out about 2 weeks ago, so sorry I'm late. But here it is. And if you have any questions, feel free to post them down in the comments below. If you need any help, you can join my Discord or ask in the comments also. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for me today. I hope you all have an excellent rest of your day, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Goodbye.